The last southbound 4 train screeched out of the Nevin Street station at 2:07 a.m., its taillights shrinking into the darkness like tired embers. Mateo Alvarez waited on the platform until the red dots vanished, then slung his tool bag over a shoulder and hopped down onto the tracks. Tonight's work order said, suspected water incursion, signal cables at risk. The kind of routine assignment that rarely required more than a few hours with a crowbar, a tube of sealant, and some carefully filed paperwork. He welcomed routine. Routine was quiet, and quiet meant no one asked why a talented sketch artist from the Bronx now spent nights in tunnels listening for leaks instead of painting murals. Mateo had mastered the art of being invisible. Headset snug, fluorescent vest dull with grime, clipboard tucked under an armpit. Even rats paid him little mind. A distant hum, part vibration, part wind of a passing local, rippled through the steel rails. Mateo stepped between them, wound his flashlight into an underarm lock, and walked along the ridge of maintenance stones. Every 10 paces he shined the beam at the wall, tiled mosaics blurred by mineral stains, signal ducts riveted in place a century ago, and brickwork that looked older than the city's charter. He found the leak almost immediately. Water hadn't loosened the wall. Something else had. A fist-sized clump of bricks jutted awkwardly, like crooked teeth. When he prodded them with a gloved hand, the entire patch wobbled against a hollow rasp, as if the brick were a flimsy shell hiding an empty lung. Mateo glanced at the order sheet. No mention of old repairs here. He set down his bag, selected a chisel, and began prying. The first brick slid out with a gritty sigh, exposing a black void behind it. Another brick followed, then another, until a space big enough for his head opened. He leaned in. Instead of the expected concrete backfill, his light caught an iron surface 2 feet behind the wall. Dust filmed its ribbed pattern like frost on a window pane. At the center sat a knobless wheel, fashioned from the same iron, the ends of its spokes carved into tiny keys. Etched above the wheel, barely visible beneath city grime, was a line of lettering, Vota in umbra vivunt. Mateo recognized neither the language nor script, but the shape of the words hummed inside his chest like a forgotten melody. Maintenance to control, track K4, he said, pressing the transmit button on his radio. Silence answered, the RF dead zone stretched between tunnels. He was alone, the way he'd chosen to live since the night Lucia died. A memory sharp as a neon flick flashed. Lucia at 8 years old, holding the cheap plastic medal she'd won at a junior swim meet, her laughter echoing off a humid pool ceiling. A drunken driver stole that laugh 10 years ago, and Mateo's life veered underground soon after. He swallowed. The sensation of being watched, by whom he couldn't say, flushed across his skin. He should log the discovery, call for historical preservation, let daylight people argue over its removal, but the empty apartment waiting for him after shift, the half-sketch canvases piling to the ceiling, all those seeded yesterdays that never broke soil, those things pushed him forward. His hands turned the iron wheel. It rotated easily, dislodging rust flakes that drifted like brown snow. A metallic click vibrated through the wall. Then the entire door, thinner than it had looked, swung inward without even a creak. Air that smelled of penny coins and rain-doused candles rolled out. Something else flowed with it. A hush so complete, it erased the tremors of distant trains and the roar of traffic miles above. Mateo ducked through. A descending spiral staircase curved away. Forged of the same iron, steps webbed with dust filaments. He tested one with a boot heel, solid. Replacing the batteries of courage with a fresh set of curiosity, he followed the spiral down. 27 steps delivered him to a cavern, lit by nothing he recognized, yet bright enough to see clearly. Light sifted through the space like liquid twilight, pooling in gentle hollows. The walls weren't cut rock, but smooth layers of obsidian shot through with flecks of fluorescent green, as though the aurora had burrowed underground and frozen mid-dance. But even the unearthly walls paled beside what moved across the cavern floor. Shadows, but not shadows cast from physical bodies. These floated inches above the stone, shifting between recognizably human outlines and motes of pure shape. They were colored only by absence, yet Mateo saw them the way one sees wind in tall grass, visible because of what they made shiver. Some cradled ephemeral objects, an infant, a violin, a passport stamped clean of borders. Others curled into predatory forms, knives, clenched fists, mouths open too wide. They glided soundlessly, bumping, folding, dissolving into one another before reforming. When his boots scraped gravel, every shade turned as one and seemed to regard him with eyeless faces. Then, as if bored, they resumed their drifting. A voice, dry as a library page, spoke behind him. Mind the root wishes, they're fragile when new. Mateo spun. A man in a conductor's uniform, double-breasted, brass buttons green with age, stood about 15 feet away. He held a lantern full of no flame Mateo had seen before. It glowed the color of thunderstorms. The man's eyes, however, stared with present clarity. "I haven't seen a topsider since the blackout of '77, the stranger said. "But it makes sense. City lost something tonight. Something had to come looking." "I'm maintenance," Mateo managed. His mind hunted frantically for reason. Maybe sulfur fumes. Maybe he'd dozed on duty and was mid-dream. The man chuckled. "Are you indeed? Then you're exactly who the realm favors. It adores broken things. Let me guess. You found an iron door that wasn't on any survey, behind brick that wasn't in any blueprint?" Mateo nodded. "They appear for those whose wishes linger loudest," the man said. He tipped his cap. "Desmond Hull, formerly a motorman on the Interborough Rapid Transit, currently custodian of what you see. And this," he swept the lantern in a grand semicircle, "is Umbra Vault. Here, the city's wishes gather like dew, spoken, whispered, or merely exhaled in sleep. They seep through concrete, drip beneath bedrock, and hatch as shadows. Some benign, some not." Mateo watched a small silhouette float away from his boots. It looked like a paper airplane, folding and unfolding as it sailed. "If wishes become that, what happens up there?" "Nothing immediate," Hull said, "unless someone takes a shadow home. Then the wish solidifies topside. Problem is, for each adopted wish, another equal and opposite deficit must root somewhere. Balance." Hull regarded Mateo as if measuring his seams. "What would you take if taking were free?" Mateo's throat felt parched. He didn't need to say it. He knew the shape it would wear. Lucia's giggle made flesh and air. Hull seemed to hear. "Ah, the heartbreaking wish, most common. They grow strong and tempting. Look, yours is already forming." Across the cavern, two shadows coalesced. One shortened to the stature of a young girl, hair bun bouncing while an invisible ribbon trailed. The other, an older boy's figure, joined hands with the first. They danced in circles, halos of dust curling around their feet. Mateo recognized the memory. He and Lucia, spinning to a bolero in the kitchen, aprons warping around their waists. His vision blurred. When he blinked, the shadows had paused mid-dance and were staring at him as though aware of their maker. "May I approach?" Mateo asked, surprised by the husk in his voice. "Of course," Hull said, "but every step is a negotiation." Mateo edged closer. The sister shadow extended its arms like a child demanding to be carried. Warmth, not heat, but the soothing gradient of a summer afternoon, flowed through him. He reached forward. Hull's lantern clanged against the stone. "Remember, if you claim her, something else will be lost obliviously above. You won't choose what. Might be a stranger's hope. Might be the city's power grid for a week. Might be the last beech tree in Central Park. A wish costs wishing." Mateo's fingertips hovered inches from Lucia's silhouette. 5 subway workers relied on him to finish the night's call list. Hundreds of commuters relied on those workers. Millions relied on the city's quiet machinery. Pull one cog, the gears catch. Yet here was Lucia, hers the laugh that once coaxed him to paint skies on cracked tenement walls so she could keep a piece of morning indoors. He withdrew his hand. The sister shadow tilted its pixie head, then smiled. A phenomenon impossible in a smear of dark. Yet Mateo felt the curve of its lips. "Good," Hull murmured. "Selfish wishes birth greedy hungers. But not all adoption is theft. There is equilibrium if done properly. The realm's archives hold the rights, yet they're inaccessible." "Why?" Hull pointed beyond the swirling throng of shapes to a series of pillars draped in cobweb chains. A massive gate of rusted bronze stood shattered open. On its threshold sprawled a heap of darkness, thicker than any other. Amid it glimmered the chrome surface of an expensive wristwatch, the flick of a silk tie. A man named Everett Crane came in 2010. Hedge fund wunderkind. His wish was to never fear want again, Hull said, disgust curling his words. He harvested hundreds of ambitions, gluttonous fool. The archives are beyond that gate, but Crane's mutated wish guards it now. It devours the vault's language so no one can learn to balance. Matteo eyed the heap. It breathed, a long, oily rise and fall, as if the vault itself had grown a lung infected by tar. "Why not shut the place?" he asked. "Seal the iron door?" Because Crane left ways open when he took his bounty upstairs. Fractures riddled the city's underside. Steam tunnels, sewers, cable corridors. Shadows leak. If the archives stay sealed, more Cranes will stumble in, armed with greed and ignorance. "You need someone to cross that gate," Matteo said. Hull nodded. "Someone who knows repair, who understands systems that must run unseen, who has reason to respect wishes but not be enslaved by them." "A maintenance worker," Matteo whispered. He thought of nights patching cracked track beds, rebolting plates so trains wouldn't rattle loose. He thought of his father teaching him to change the belt on a washing machine. "Fix what people count on, son. They'll never notice, but they'll live their lives." Unnoticed heroics. That was the lineage of a maintenance man. Matteo faced Lucia's shadow again. "Come with me," he said. It giggled, soundless but vibrant, and flitted into his chest like a swallowed breath. Warmth settled under his sternum. Hull raised his lantern. "Stay within the light. It keeps the unmoored wishes docile. And try not to think of anything you wouldn't want made real." "No pressure," Matteo muttered, and together they approached the gate. The breathing heap stirred, unfurling tendrils of black that sharpened into stock charts, skyscraper silhouettes, vault door dials spinning greedily. Each tendril twined into words pulsing neon green. More, more, more. Crane's wish lunged. Hull swept the lantern, a gale of violet ions bursting outward. Some tendrils recoiled, but the core advanced, dragging its slick mass, shrieking in the clatter of ringing cash registers. Dollar signs flashed across its hide. Matteo spotted lengths of broken chain littering the floor. Iron still bright where bronze corroded. He grabbed one, wrapped it around his forearm, feeling its honest heft. He wasn't a warrior. He fixed things. Then he realized bolts, plates, weld points. The vault gate's hinge pins lay jarred out, leaving gaps where metal should seat. If closed and pinned, the gate could cage the wish once more. "Keep it busy!" he yelled. Hull responded, lantern blazing arcs like a lighthouse. Matteo dashed to the hinge. Crane's wish caught sight and bellowed, sprouting claws made of golden pen nibs. They stabbed into the stone, pulling the beast closer. Lucia's warmth fluttered. His chest tightened. He felt her wordless plea. "Don't feed it." He heaved on the gate. Rust groaned but yielded. A train horn, maybe real, maybe memory, roared somewhere above, lending rhythm. Matteo shoved until bronze kissed bronze, the halves aligning. He slapped the first hinge pin in, hammered it with the back of a flashlight. The beam shattered, plunging him partly in darkness, but he kept hammering. Crane's wish rammed the bars, screeching dividends and derivatives. The lattice shook, one bar snapped. Behind him, Hull gritted curses, flame lights sputtering. "Second pin!" Hull called. Matteo jammed it. The gate clanged shut. Chains slithered back to life, welding themselves across. Light drained from Crane's wish, replaced by a starved hush. The beast sagged behind bronze, reduced to a black puddle muttering interest rates. Hull exhaled the way a man finishes a 30-year confession. "One more thing," he said, handing Matteo the lantern. "You must make an offering. The vault needs a custodian, but you deserve daylight. Name a wish you will leave to guard the gate." Lucia's shadow emerged from Matteo's chest, still childlike but solemn now. If he left her here, she would not walk beside him in sunlit Harlem or laugh at the A-train breakdancers. She would exist, but only as a caretaker of balance where no birds sang. It felt like losing her again. But some losses carve room for light. He knelt. "Stay," he whispered. "Keep the greedy ones locked away. And remember the bolero." The shadow hugged him, a cool hush around his neck. Then she drifted through the bars, sat atop the quieted mass of Crane's Wish, and began to glow pale silver, a moon over oil. The vault brightened. Across its floor, other shadows took gentler shapes. Library cards, tree saplings, two hands clasped. Whispered thanks floated like feathers. Hull smiled, tears tracing soot lines. Balance restored, for a time. Go, Mateo Alvarez. The door will close after you, but you'll find ordinary entrances plenty extraordinary now. Mateo returned up the spiral. As he passed through the iron doorway, the wheel spun of its own accord, sealing with a satisfying thunk. He replaced the bricks carefully, mixing mortar from his kit. No one would suspect anything beyond a routine patch. Back on the tracks, he checked his watch. 3:41 a.m. The world had turned 94 minutes, while he'd spent a lifetime below. The third rail hum felt like sunrise. At shift's end, he filed the work ticket. Breach sealed, no further action. Then he rode an empty train uptown. Through speckled windows, the city looked less exhausted, as though it too had swallowed a breath of warmth. That afternoon, instead of collapsing into bed, Mateo took the Q to Astoria, where an old friend owned a storefront art studio. He rang the bell, portfolio of half-finished drawings under his arm. "I'm looking for wall space," he told her. "I have a mural in mind, skies and kids dancing." When she asked what stirred the sudden courage, he answered truthfully, "A maintenance job reminded me things break if you don't share the light." Weeks later, commuters exiting Nevin Street glanced up at a new mosaic unfolding tile by tile across the mezzanine wall. Silhouettes of children spinning beneath an iron-wrought moon, their shadows stretching into dawn, ferrying wishes made visible at last.